Hey, what's up everyone? Nathan back to explain one of the most contentious topics of Smogon metagames, complex bans. So before on the channel, we've discussed that sometimes Pokemon are a little too overbearing for metagame and require a ban. And in a follow-up interview I conducted with Finchinator, he explained the points where Pokemon can become too overbearing for a metagame and warrant a ban, which for the most part I think tracks pretty well, whether you agree with the philosophy of banning or not. But what I intentionally left out in those videos is a secret extra option for dealing with Pokemon that are too overpowered. An option that doesn't ban the problem Pokemon wholesale, but maybe just a single part of them that's broken. This idea of banning singular parts of a Pokemon instead of the entire Pokemon itself is known as a complex ban. Best explain it, let's use some examples for a second here. First, let's head to the past with Generation 5 or Black and White Overused, aka the best metagame in Pokemon Showdown. Please do not attempt to at me on this. Now, one of the defining features of the 5th generation, besides amazing sprites and Pokemon yada yada, is that instead of only lasting for a handful of turns, weather is infinite in those games. That means once a Tyranitar or Hippowdon swaps in, sand will be up for the entire game unless the opponent sets up their own weather, like a Politoed's drizzle creating rain or a Ninetales drought creating sun. This weird characteristic is a huge part of how the tier is played, and is why the metagame is affectionately referred to as Weather Wars. Now, those of you familiar with weather in more recent generations might be quick to ask, wait a second, if weather stays up forever, doesn't that make Pokemon like Kingdra with its swift swim ability, or Venusaur with its chlorophyll ability completely insane when their weather is up? I mean, after all, those speed doubling abilities are extremely powerful when weather only lasts for 5 to 8 turns like it does in modern generations. Wouldn't that just make them completely cracked back in Gen 5? In short, yes. These Pokemon were completely dominant and essential part of how the generation was played for quite some time. And realistically, there wasn't much that the tier's council could do to stop that. After all, if they banned Venusaur and Kingdra for being too over-centralizing, then other Pokemon with the same abilities, like Ludicolo who also has Swift Swim, or Shiftry who also has Chlorophyll, would be right there to take their place. So this is where the Black and White Overuse Council got together and said enough's enough and introduced one of the most significant complex bans Smogon has ever seen. All speed doubling weather abilities were complex banned, meaning you were still allowed to use a Pokemon like Excadrill, but you couldn't use its ability Sand Rush. This was an extremely drastic measure, but as someone who came to competitive Pokemon primarily through Gen 5, I've got to say it was for the best. So now you guys understand the concept of a complex ban. Instead of banning a Pokemon wholesale, you ban a certain specific thing about them that's overpowered. So for another example, if you ban the ability Sheer Force on Landorus Incarnate, it would very likely be fine for overused. Or hell, you could take a Pokemon like Dracovish and ban its Vicious Rend attack. All of a sudden, they're no longer overpowered. So if that's the case, why does Smogon not pursue complex bans more frequently as a means of balancing? Well, to explain that, let's talk some more about the current overused metagame in Sword and Shield. Somewhat recently, Cinderace was banned for being a little too much for overused. Now, balance-wise, Cinderace used to be completely fine in earlier metagames before it got its new hidden ability, Libero. Libero is much like Greninja's Protean ability, which lets it change its typing according to the move it uses. So you send in Stakataka, boom, stab, high jump kick coming right at you. Clefable, alright, bet, hold this same type gunk shot. Ah, well, maybe you send in someone faster like Dragapult, that'll handle it, right? Here's a dark type sucker punch. And what's that? Ferrothorn is all you got left? Well, I hate to break it to you, but I've still got a fire type Power Ball with your name on it, buddy. So yes, this Pokemon was a little bit much with Libero, but once again, if regular old Blaze Cinderace wasn't overpowered, still wouldn't be, then why don't we just complex ban Libero? This question is the heart of the topic of complex bans, and a big reason why people are so quick to get heated about bans in general. If Cinderace is my favorite Pokemon, why wouldn't we allow Blaze Cinderace in the tier? First of all, there's something to be said for simplicity. Hardcore Smogon vets might not think or care about this stuff, but when you think about a newcomer coming to the game, it's a lot simpler for them to just have a basic list of Pokemon where these ones are allowed, these ones aren't. As surprising as this might sound, Smogon does actually strive to change the way the game is played as little as possible. Yes, they've made a ton of changes from cartridge Sword and Shield singles to Showdown Overuse singles, like removing Dynamax, introducing a Sleep Clause, banning certain Pokemon, etc. But that's because all these qualities are considered by the larger community to be uncompetitive features that have to be changed for a healthy 6v6 metagame. But that doesn't mean that they're going to start changing things just because they can. The last thing Smogon wants is a newcomer booting up Showdown for the first time, trying to make a team, having to wade through a bunch of extra complexities and minutia, like, oh, you can't use Libero Cinderace, you need to be using this ability, and
You can't be using Damp Rock on Pelipper there, or sorry friend, full defensive EVs on Toxapan? That got banned back in 2022.
Like it or not, but a metagame that fully embraces complex bans would be much more alienating to newcomers. Having a straightforward list of Pokemon that are banned and Pokemon that are not is simple. It doesn't fundamentally change the fabric of the game. But I can bet that argument didn't quite sway you there. I get it. I wouldn't have been satisfied with that either. Because I want to use my Blaze Cinderace, damn it. Screw the newcomers, screw them. Well, okay. To fully explain the thinking on why complex bans don't really work, let's go completely down the rabbit hole here. So first off, let's look at another Pokemon with an ability that makes it really, really good. Landorus Incarnate with its Sheer Force ability. Sheer Force transforms a Pokemon's moves with secondary effects to be 30% more powerful, but have no secondary effects. So for example, Psychic is his 90 base power attack with a 10% chance to drop the opponent's special defense, but after Landorus Incarnate uses it with its Sheer Force ability, that Psychic becomes a base 117 power attack with no chance to drop the special defense. This is of course insanely good. And to make matters worse, if that Landorus is using a Life Orb, which boosts the power of its attacks by an additional 30% in exchange for a tenth of its health, that loss of health is also negated. So you are getting a 60% boost to all of your attacks completely free. So yes, once again, insanely good ability that drove Landorus Incarnate to be banned from overuse, separated from its brother Landorus Therian yet again. Now I ask you, should we be complex banning Sheer Force so that Landorus Incarnate can be unbanned? Well, no, of course not. Sheer Force is used by all kinds of Pokemon, and it's completely balanced on them. I can think of no reason why we should completely cripple Nidoking and Copperajah and Nidoqueen just in favor of helping a completely different Pokemon. At a certain point, you just have to treat a Pokemon as a sum of its parts, and Landorus Incarnate with that typing, base stats, move pool, and yes, ability is just too much for overused. Let it stay banned. Now, a good example of the opposite of this effect would be Dugtrio and its Arena Trap ability. So I made a video talking about Arena Trap before, but in short, it's stupid and uncompetitive. Trapping Pokemon to pick apart the single enemy Pokemon that your team can't deal with is dumb and leads to really restricted metagames where you only use Pokemon that can handle Dugtrio. But outside of Arena Trap, Dugtrio is garbage and absolutely not worthy of a ban. In fact, Arena Trap is so good that if you just ban Dugtrio, there is good odds that even Diglett with Arena Trap would find usage too. It's just that freaking annoying of an ability. So in this case, opposite to Sheer Force that I mentioned earlier, we can look at Arena Trap and say, okay, this ability is fundamentally uncompetitive. It should be banned. No matter who has it, might get it in the future, or could even theoretically get it. It's never going to be a competitively balanced ability. As a result, Arena Trap has since been complex banned from overused. So this all begs the final question of Cinderace yet again. Should we be complex banning Cinderace? Unlike Sheer Force and Arena Trap, Cinderace and its pre-evolutions are the only Pokemon that have access to Libero, so it should be pretty straightforward, right? Well, first of all, from a pure game theory standpoint, not really, because again, in terms of game balance, Libero is not a fundamentally game-breaking ability at all. If Hitmonlee or Excelgor or Togekiss suddenly got access to Libero, they might suddenly become much better and more overused viable, but there's almost no way they would be banned. Again, it's a great ability, but not an uncompetitive one. So in banning Libero, we would be giving Cinderace preferential treatment. We would be saying, look, we know this ability isn't broken, but it's the only thing holding Cinderace back from being fit for overuse, so let's just ban it. Which I'm sure still seems very innocuous to many of you, but trust me when I say that it opens up the floodgates. Because after all, if we look at Magearna, the main tipping point that made it ban-worthy was its choice spec set, and the ambiguity of what set you were playing against came into it as well. So if we just ban Magearna from using choice specs, they would then become fair for overused. Or Kyurem Black, despite being a title legendary, it's actually been completely fair for overuse for 3 straight generations. It's just that it getting access to Dragon Dance and Icicle Spear this generation that put it over the top. So we just nip that in the bud and complex ban those 2 moves with Kyurem Black, we can let it back in, right? Or hey, if we only allowed Mewtwo to be level 85 instead of level 100, it would have about the same stats as a starter Pokemon like Venusaur. That must mean to be pretty fair too, right? These examples might seem a bit exaggerated, but the concept of picking and choosing which parts to nerf or remove from Pokemon is fundamentally the same suggestion as banning Libero from Cinderace. Like it or not, but not all Pokemon were designed to be on the same playing field. Game Freak doesn't care that your favorite Pokemon is Butterfree. A bug you find in the starting route forest isn't meant to be able to throw hands with an archaic god of space and time. If you really want, you can tweak this and change that and fix this so that every Pokemon is completely equal, but for my money, that kind of changes the fabric of the game. After all, the fundamental imbalance is what makes Pokemon so fun. Seeing people like Blunder ripping through pseudo-legendaries like Garchomp and Tyranitar with the Tauros is amazing in my opinion, and would lose most of its appeal if Tauros had been tweaked and balanced to fit alongside Garchomp the same way a champion is with its peers in League of Legends. Really, the most simple idea to handle all of these disparate Pokemon with completely varying levels of strength and power would be to separate them and organize them all into their own tiers where they can play against Pokemon of their own relative strength and still get opportunities to shine. Which, for those following along at home, is exactly the system we have in place right now. The more you think about it and follow everything to its natural conclusion, the more you realize that arguments for more and more complex bans kind of fly in the face of Smogon tiering systems in general. So if Arcanine is my favorite Pokemon ever, but doesn't quite have the juice to hang in overused, that's fine. To be honest, it doesn't even have to be amazing underused or rarely used either, because in never used, it is its own completely amazing offensive pivot. Its typing, bulk, attacking stats, and insane access to teleport lets it swap in on a ton of the top tier threats like Copperajah and Sylveon and Bronzong, and then swap back out. Again, nobody is stopping me from using Arcanine at all. Trust me, it's a blast to use an NU, and I do use it there. And you know what? The same goes for a Pokemon like Dracovish, who is banned from overuse. If you love them that much and you want to use them, then you absolutely should do so in the Ubers tier. Or you could even say in the case of Cinderace, it's a pivotal part of how Mono Fire is played in Monotype, for example. So I would recommend you try that out. Because again, trust me, it's awesome there too. So hey, that's my spiel done on complex bans. It was a long time coming. I know it's not gonna be satisfactory enough for a lot of you. And I also know that I'm bound to receive my fair share of very angry comments. Something about this topic always gets people pretty heated, but that's fine, I can take it. I just hope that most of you guys can now understand the thinking behind Smogon's stance on complex bans. Because even if you don't personally agree with it, maybe you can at least appreciate that it's the most simple and the least transfigurative method of handling balance. But otherwise, that's gonna be me done for today. Before I sign off, I wanna give a big thanks to Swappa, the current OU tier leader, for giving me some advice and steering me into the right track in my thinking with this video. And also a huge shout out to Finchinator, who also helped me make this video. This dude is amazing at helping me out whenever I feel a little in over my head on topics like this. And I hope you guys check out his YouTube channel if you haven't already somehow. If you enjoyed the video and don't know what I'm about to say, then listen very closely, because believe it or not, subscribing to the channel and liking this video, well, it helps a lot. So please consider doing that if you haven't already. But thanks regardless for watching. I'll catch you next time.